Also wie es ist jetzt Zimmer, und alles ist auf Räder, alles fuhrt auf Räder, man geht in different countries, in camps, man fuhrt weg Zimmer auf Shabusam. Es ist sehr wichtig, man soll lernen, ein paar Sachen muss man darf lernen mit den Kindern. Ich habe schon gesagt, ein ganzes Jahr, so wie ich schon ein paar Jahr. Aber es ist jetzt sehr wichtig, man soll wissen wegen Abducting Children, man kann aufpicken an Kinder mal wegtrugen, und auch da wissen, wo sind denn die Rules für Kinder, was man darf sie auslernen, soll man sie bleiben, eibig vor allem. Ich habe gemacht ein extra Kästel auf dem, und jeder soll ummatzluchen mit einer eibischen Hilfe. Heute die erste Sache ist wichtig zu lassen wissen von Neulam, als sie du geht ein Eis. Es wendet sich von wem sie geht, für einem es geht, für einem nicht. Se du eine, wer sie gedenkt dem Numen Joili Oberländer. Ist angefangen einmal bei Nacht in Bobbe, wenn campt, molestet 2 Kinder, was jetzt weiß man, in Efscher mehr. Und keiner hat nicht gewollt pressen Charges, wer hat ja gewollt pressen Charges, hat man ihm still gemacht. In Bobbe haben sie ausgemerkt, das Video. Bekitzer, aber in Sommer als ein Minne, in Sommer auf Ordens, weiß man, whoever strikes once, will strike again. So der Joili Oberländer, ein 36-jähriger junger Mann, ich gefuhr mit einem El Al-Flight. Kennen Sie an diese dazu? Ich gefuhr mit einem El Al. El Al ist doch ein zynistischer Flieger. Bekitzer, da gewesen eine ältere Frau, was hat gehalten in ein Patschken mit ihr. Ich habe getan, ich bin du mit meiner Mama, chappen nicht mit mir, ich bin nicht kein Sexfreak. Aber also wird doch schon gehabt, ich habe mit einem 11-jährigen Mädel, hat sie geräbt. In Monsi. Und man hat geliked Pressure, soll rausgehen frei. Fein, jetzt halt sie in der Gas. Ich habe Azar nur. Die alle haben sich geschlungen von den Pedophiles. Anyway. Und hat nebach in der Camp dort molestet, ein paar Bucher. Und jetzt hat umgegangen mit einer alten Frau. Die alte Frau hat ihm angesetzt, hat ihm auch genommen für einen Flieger, hat gedacht, ich verzeihl der Masse. Mein Kitzer, aber er hat gut Meude gewinnt. Er hat sich ausgelernt. Jechiel Bronners Methode, die beste Methode. Man ist gut Meude, man legt auf die Pilze, man sucht. Der Judge soll kommen, Pfizer, als arbeitet nicht. Das ist die beste Methode. Anyway, sucht sich Emmes, hat getoucht die Frau, wie man tut nicht. In Apur Mool sind am etlichen gesucht, Herr Schanow. Mit Kitze, so wie das Meute gewesen, ich habe ihn gesagt, das ist die beste Sache. Aber ihm gegeben 13 Chadushim in Jail. So, jetzt haben wir sich keine Meure, als hat schon noch ein Kind, sagt er so. Dem Zimmer kann man noch Meure haben, aber für das nächste Jahr hat man wissen, dass die Stadt schon keine. Normaal aber so wie sie Zimmer, immer fort raus in Country, fremde Menschen, mit ihm visiten, es ist lebendig. Ich will noch einmal eure sagen, stark dem Eulam, man soll sehr watschen, nicht zu haben Hitches mit keinem, nicht zu fuhren mit keinem. Es ist eine Sache, Strangers, wo sie will sich zitschäppen und zitter. Und als sie will sich zitschäppen und zitter, ist ein größeres Problem, weil die weiß nicht, wie sie rauszugehen finden. Will ich aufleiten, du hast Stickel Advice, wo es Jerebiankel Horowitz an einem mit dem Police Department hat zusammengestellt. Und ich will der Eulam soll es so sehen, weil ich sage in damals, ich will immer sagen, muss schlechte Calls und gute Calls, muss Scheltman, muss Benchman. Die, was ich aber auch gleich vorige Woche, sei der größere Schier von anderthalb Schuhe, und sei der Schier, was ich gegeben habe, aber ausgenommen gewisse Ketum, gewisse Chalukken von Gitterredners. Ich habe gekommen aus so viel Calls, unbelievable what a job you're doing. So will ich Ihnen geben, die jetzt noch eine kleine aufgehabten Information, was ist sehr wichtig.
Hi, I'm Yaakov Horowitz, and this video is intended to give you some tips about speaking to your children regarding stranger danger. And though the vast overwhelming majority of abuse cases take place with people the children know, or in their inner circle, so to speak, there are certainly cases of stranger danger and, God forbid, abduction of children. And in Lakewood, New Jersey, there have been some attempted abductions as of late, and there certainly is heightened anxiety there. So just some tips. I'll start with some pointers that the Chief of Police of Lakewood sent out recently with just some common sense advice to parents. See that your children are supervised, especially younger children. Just make sure that there's an adult within sight of children. Older children that are walking, see to it that they don't take any shortcuts. They walk in well-lit areas, and they walk in groups. I once did a talk on child safety in Alpine, New Jersey, together with the Chief of Police, and he offered two fascinating pieces of advice that I thought were very enlightening, and maybe, hopefully, you'll find it as well. He said that tell children that if they're being followed by anyone or they're uncomfortable by an adult that's following them, instead of running away, they should cross the street and reverse direction, or if they're in a mall, just turn around and run the other way, because it will be much more noticeable if other passersby or people in the mall will notice that an adult went the other way to follow a child. And if, God forbid, the adult gets closer to the child and the child is more concerned, he suggested that the child be trained to yell, "This is not my father." Because nowadays when we see a child crying in the street or carrying on with a parent next to them, we tend to turn away because we've been in that situation recently, and we out of sympathy we turn away. So by announcing that this is not my parent and no relative of mine, help, and that's really the message. Teach your children to get out of the situation and to yell at the top of their lungs. That's really what's going to frighten someone away who would, God forbid, want to abduct the child. The very good news is that this education really does work, and speaking to your children is extremely helpful. We had a similar rash of attempted abductions in our hometown of Monsey, and campaigns like this where parents were sent emails and encouraged to speak to their children about it, it really did help. And every single child that was involved in a situation like that over the next few weeks knew exactly what to do. They yelled, they ran away, they went to their parents, informed their parents, who called the police. I did get a very clear psak, a halachic ruling from Rab David Cohen Shlita, that preferably with a shinoi, but we must call the police immediately on Shabbos if something does take place on Shabbos, as it poses a clear danger to our children. And a similar psak was issued by Rav Forsheimer of Lakewood, New Jersey. And one final thought: this is the beginning of a conversation that should take place. Add your own thoughts. Feel free to, but don't frighten the children. It really, when we overly frighten the children, they should be aware. A moderate amount of anxiety is okay, but when we overly frighten the children, research shows that they don't remember the messages we tell them, and it really doesn't help them much. They tend to freeze rather than feeling empowered that they know what to do in the event that something happens. I got a call a few years ago from a father in Borough Park, a Hasidic fellow, who had read our book to his children and was talking to them about child safety. And he told his boys that if you're ever in shul and you're in an uncomfortable situation, he gave them all watches, actually, and he said, look at your watch and say in Yiddish, my father's coming to meet me now. And he called me to tell me that his child was in a situation like that and knew exactly what to do, very calmly looked at his watch. His father was nowhere near. But he said, my father's coming now, and the guy scooted off. And thankfully, he was reported to the police, and he was arrested for having abused other children in that same shul. So this stuff really does work. Feel empowered. Certainly be anxious and be aware and heighten your supervision of your children. But your message to your children is that they should feel empowered to be able to take proper and defensive behavior in case something happens to them. Have a wonderful Shabbos, and hope you found this helpful.
Seht, ich habe ein Kaiwi gesagt, ich halte auch die Luche, aber ein Kind seht, es in danger, mag call the police im Shabbos. There's no rule against it. Es ist dieselbe Pikir Nefesh. Und die Schale ist, wie kommt der Telefon? Es halt ich, als in jeder Schule, so wie sie da Zule, die Sache, was sie macht für Bereich mit allen Sachen, ich halte da so ein Telefon, in jeder Schule auch hat. Aber Buchel sitzen allein, dass fleißig fragt, wo ist der lange Schabes noch mittags. Fragt die Gemur empfert, die Gemur und plötzlich gibt der Chaser und geht am Chap und ein Pipik. Was steht noch daheim? Schreien, kennen, schreit Moira, so hat ein Telefon, hypt auf dem Telefon im Schabes. Hab ihn gesucht mit der Pinky, mit der kleinen Finger, am da heißt es Sashini. Und da war nicht da allgeherig, es ist Kunst und Fusches. Es darf sein, jede Schiele hat Telefon, ein ruhiges Telefon, also wie sie vielleicht muss an, sie kommen dazu, ich meine, sie hat auch noch eine Sache, und darf sein, ein ruhiges Telefon, sie kommen der Polizei. Wo ist einer attackiert an sie? Ich suche schon 10 Jahre, es darf sein. Es darf sein, ein Telefon, bist du mal kusher, das ist eine kusher, nicht kein Smartphone, nicht kein Smartphone, aber ein Telefon darf sein. Jetzt, also wie es ist immer, man kommt sich zusammen in alle Countries, verschiedene meine Menschen, und das sei gewollt, ich habe schon gesagt, 10 Mal, ich habe schon gehabt, auf dem Telefonline etliche Mal, ich will es auch aussehen, noch einmal, von Rabbi Horowitz, sehr wichtige Message, wieso wir das lernen, reden mit den Kindern. Es ist sehr wichtig. Hört das aus.
Hi, I'm Yaakov Horowitz, and this is the video on child safety and abuse prevention, presented as a public service of the Karasik Child Safety Initiative of the Center for Jewish Family Life and Project Yes. Today we're going to talk about the 4 components of an effective research-based child safety program and explain how it's possible to train a 40, 50-pound child to defend themselves against a 200-pound adult. Let's go through the 4. Number 1 is no secrets from parents, basically training children that no one is ever allowed to tell them to keep a secret from you. The second is your body belongs to you, the basic notion of personal space and their ownership of that. The third is good touching, bad touching, explaining that some touching is appropriate and other touching in inappropriate spots is bad touching. And the fourth is no one has the right to make you feel uncomfortable, which basically means that the child has a right to walk away from a situation where he or she feels uncomfortable. It's important to understand that an effective child safety program is not about developing the physical strength of your children. It's rather about developing their emotional well-being. It's not about making them powerful. It's about empowering them. It's not about making them frightened about the adults in their life. Quite to the contrary, it's about making the predators frightened of them because they have been educated. That's why child safety education is so effective, and that's why you can train 40, 50-pound children to defend themselves against larger and stronger adults. Because as far as child safety is concerned, education is the ultimate power. Before we begin, just a quick note about your tone and demeanor when you're speaking to your children about child safety. When parents are anxious while speaking to their children about child safety, the children tend to get overwhelmed by your anxiety and forget these very important messages that you give to them. So if you think of it in terms of anxiety level of 1 to 10, with 1 being extremely calm and 10 being very anxious, about 2, 3 on that scale would be just about right. Enough to let them know that it's important, but not too much to overwhelm them. The first of the 4 safety messages is no secrets from parents, which basically means that you train your children that no one is ever allowed to tell them to keep a secret from you. And if someone does that, they should immediately tell you. And the reason this is important is because there is absolutely no justifiable reason for any adult in their lives to ever tell them to keep a secret from you. And that's a red flag for predatory behavior whenever that happens. And that's why it's so important that as parents, you get in the habit of having regular conversations with your children, preferably every day when they come home from school, when you come home from work, over dinner, just to turn off your phone for a few minutes, really listen to them, find out about their day, and get them in the habit of downloading whatever happened to them during the day, good, bad, and everything in between. The second of the 4 safety messages is your body belongs to you. Basically, explaining to the children that they have personal ownership of their body and their own personal space. Now that might seem pretty simple, but it's very important that children internalize this concept. In fact, if children even have their own drawer at home, that in and of itself is helpful to them in understanding their personal space and understanding that they have a right to defend that. Good touching, bad touching is basically explaining to children that in their physical interaction with other children and adults, there's some touching that's okay and there's some touching that's not okay, namely if someone touches them in a private spot. One of the most comfortable ways for parents to explain this to children is to say that no one has the right to touch you in a spot that's covered by a bathing suit. That's generally okay for girls and boys and explains to them the basic concept of what we're talking about. It's quite evident that when having these discussions with young children, exceptions must be made to the rule of good touching, bad touching, because parents and caregivers are taking care of their physical needs and must touch them in private areas when bathing or cleaning them. However, it's very important to list exceptions to these rules very carefully and with a very narrow window of which people are okay and which aren't. Sadly, the vast majority of predators are not strangers, but rather people that the children come in contact with on a regular basis, like family members or kids on the block. Therefore, the conversation should sound something like this. You should not be looking at or touching other people in their private areas, and no one has the right to look at or touch you in your private area, except for mommy and daddy when we're bathing or dressing you, when grandma's over babysitting and she needs to bathe or dress you, a doctor during an examination, and one of us are in the room with you. But not use terms like except for people in our family or except for people that we know well. The fourth safety message is no one has the right to make you feel uncomfortable. Basically explaining to children that they should trust their instincts, and if they feel uncomfortable or threatened, they should immediately run away from that situation. Although some instances of abuse take place during the very first meeting between a predator and the victim, that's the exception to the rule. Typically, the process of grooming takes place over weeks, months, sometimes even years before the actual molestation occurs. What happens in the meantime? During that grooming process, the predator starts initial contact, initial invasion of the space in very innocent ways, touching them on the hand, touching them on the arm, patting them on the shoulder, rubbing their back. Now, this is so important to understand because what happens is there's some point in time when a line was crossed. Nothing was done. And if a child complained about it, he would be laughed off. Big deal, he rubbed your back. But the kid felt uncomfortable. And forensic analysis of these horrible situations shows that children felt uncomfortable way before they were molested. And that's the message parents have to get to their children. If you feel uncomfortable, get out. And if you come and tell me something, and I don't think it's that serious, you still did the right thing. You have to teach your children to trust their instincts. The predators are very evil about this, and they're very brilliant in how they break down the children's defenses. And the best solution to this, the best defense against this, is to teach your children to trust their instincts and get out the very first second that they feel uncomfortable. Each and every one of these four safety messages are very valuable lessons for children, but together they form a comprehensive unit that really keeps them safe. No secrets from parents. Your body belongs to you. Good touching, bad touching, no one has the right to make you feel uncomfortable. Let's face it, we can't follow our children around for the rest of their lives, nor should we. They need to live their lives, go to school, go to summer camp, go to play dates with friends. What we need to do and what we must do as parents is to provide them with portable protection that they can take with them wherever they go. And these four safety messages can help you do this. So study child safety and give your children the gift of protection. Speak to your friends about this, because the truth of the matter is that our children will only be safe when all members of our community have these messages, so all of the children can stay safe. The greatest gift that you can give your children is to become educated yourselves about effective, research-based child safety programs, and to have the wisdom and the foresight to train your children to protect themselves and remain safe and secure at all times.